The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. We are back for another edition of Music Weekly here on the Nerdcast Empire. I am Matt. A special start time on this Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening, wherever you're listening to us, or maybe it's already Monday morning where you're listening to us. So glad to have you along with us on this week's edition of Music Weekly. Early start time because we will be watching the NXT Premium Live event, which is coming up in just a few hours here on the East Coast. And then we will have a second stream today at approximately 11 p.m. Eastern tonight where Rachel will join us for that one. And we will be breaking down the NXT Battleground event. Very excited for that. But we're talking all things music right now on Music Weekly. Joining me in the studio, the man who puts the podcast together as far as all of the lists that we have each and every week. It's Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It is going very well. Another strong week in music. Definitely looking forward to talking about some of the releases this week, or the week that we're discussing at least. Second podcast tonight for the NXT pay-per-view. Pretty excited for that as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really outstanding event. It's going to be held at the UFC Apex, and I think it could be some surprises. NXT's been very good about that lately, but we'll talk more about wrestling in a few hours. Make sure you join us for that right here on Twitch. And, of course, if you're listening on the VOD, you might be listening on Twitch on the VOD. You might be listening on the YouTube VOD, or you might be listening wherever you get your podcast.
The possibilities are endless.
Pretty much. You can hear us just about anywhere. Of course, as we mentioned, we will play clips of the new songs that we recommend on the live version of the Twitch stream, the VOD on Twitch, the VOD on YouTube. If you're listening on your podcast source, you will not get these music clips, but, you will get the rest of our podcasting goodness. And we're going to start talking about some news headlines before we get to the music. I do want to mention Chris. Chris, as we mentioned on the last podcast, dealing with a death in the family. He's been dealing with that. So, again, our condolences certainly to his wife and their family. Chris will be back with us soon from Parts Unknown. Look forward to get him back. He'll, I'm sure, be dropping into the chat. In fact, he already has. He's listening through the AOL Instant Messenger, he says. So maybe Fantastic. It really is everywhere. But Chris will be on the chat tonight, but he'll be joining us back on the audio version here before too long. We're going to talk music headlines first. And I think one thing we really stress when we talk about music is there's nothing like live music. When it comes to experiencing, no matter what type of music you enjoy, it's always better to get a chance to hear it live. And you found an article that was on Loudwire's website that basically first kind of spotlighted some new tours that had been announced, but then had a pretty extensive list of upcoming tours this summer, somewhere near you here in the United States. I'll let you kind of go first because you brought it up. Maybe some tours that have jumped off the page at you when you went through that list.
Yeah, absolutely. The initial article I saw was actually the update, the 17 new rock and metal tours announced. And as you scrolled down from there, it did kind of carry over to the original article that was kind of just a comprehensive guide to as many tours as they could possibly throw together on their website. But there are so many bands that are going to be out and about between now and through fall even. I think it's a good time. When I was looking at it, one thing I wanted to do was kind of look at the bands that I haven't seen yet that might be winding it down, that I kind of want to check off the list before it's all said and done. So kind of looking through that list, some of the things that stood out to me: Aerosmith touring between September and February of next year. We got Alice Cooper and Rob Zombie touring between July and August of this year. A band who I believe might be winding it down after they got back together for an album just recently, Blink-182, touring between June and August. I thought that was another one that, especially for people my age, even though I'm not the biggest Blink-182 fan, I can't deny their importance kind of in that early 2000 music scene. We got Clutch touring from September to October. Deep Purple and Yes touring between August and September. I would love to see both of those bands. We have the Foo Fighters touring between July and August. Styx and Foreigner touring through August. Gwar, which, despite no longer having several of their more key members, including the founder and lead singer Dave Brockie, if they're a band that you haven't seen yet, you definitely have to see their live show. Nobody puts on a concert like Gwar does. It's an event and something that I would strongly recommend to anyone. Sammy Hagar's touring with Joe Satriani, Michael Anthony, and Jason Bonham from July through August. We have Iron Maiden, who I believe are undoubtedly they have to be winding it down before too long. I would definitely encourage seeing them. Megadeth, Mudvayne, All That Remains, touring between August and September. Another one that kind of stood out to me that I wouldn't have thought about, Stone Temple Pilots are touring with Live between August and September. I think that would be a really good show. I think I also saw that Soul Asylum might have been one of the support acts for that, which would be another really cool band to see. And finally, another one that stood out to me was Testament touring with Creator between September and October, two just legendary thrash metal bands that I'm sure put on a great show.
Well, you covered most of the ones I put on my list. Just a few additions to that. Foreigner is also doing some side shows with a group called Headpins, Loverboy, and Lita Ford.
Oh, wow.
So when they're kind of maybe splitting from the Styx tour on some dates, you may get a chance to see that one. Judas Priest and Sabaton. I thought that would really stand out. Sabaton, kind of an over-the-top band, very similar to a lot of the bands we feature on this podcast. So that would make for a good show. Should be noted that in addition to, you mentioned Sammy Hagar with Joe Satriani, Michael Anthony, and Jason Bonham, they're being supported by Loverboy on that tour. So
that would be good as well.
Our Lady Peace also on the act with Stone Temple Pilots, Soul Asylum, and Live. So that's going to be a really outstanding show. The Megadeth, Mudvayne, All That Remains, that would be really solid as well. So, and the other Ministry and Filter also on that Alice Cooper, Rob Zombie co-headliner show. So, a lot of good stuff. I posted the link to this in the chat, so you can check it out. The reason this came up, I know one of the big shows, we talked a little bit about it on one of the previous podcasts, but Baby Metal going on tour here in the United States, in fact, coming to the Cincinnati area would make for a really good show to go check out. But a lot of great music, and as you mentioned, some of these bands, specifically like Deep Purple and Alice Cooper, these are groups that are probably getting to the end of their touring life, so you definitely want to get a chance to see them before they just decide to hang it up. And especially a group like Yes, that's one that is, we talk so much prog music on this, and they're certainly, I would think, on the prog Mount Rushmore of rock.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of these bands, I would have already assumed I'd missed out on my opportunity to see them. Like, I wasn't really banking on getting to see Deep Purple in my life, but, if this opportunity presents itself, I think I may have to take that chance.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So let us know what concerts you're excited about. You can leave comments, obviously, in the chat live with us here. If you're watching on the VOD, you can message us through our social media. You can also leave comments on our YouTube page when the VOD goes up there as well. Probably send a carrier pigeon. I don't know. There's lots of ways to get a hold of us at the Nerdcast Empire. Let us know what concerts you're excited for. And if you go see any of these concerts, let us know how it went. We'll definitely share anybody's thoughts on their concert experiences. But again, there's nothing like live music. Definitely check some music out this summer. A couple other news stories. This is another one you shared, and I thought this was kind of a funny story. For those of us of a certain age, and I would think probably Chris is probably vaguely familiar with this, but I would say that's kind of about the point where anybody younger than Chris is probably going to be too young to really remember this. But iTunes and whatever other
Spotify, Pandora, whatever you're using, web-based music players even.
Before all that, there was Winamp. That was what all of us used, and it was so classic. And the story came out from Tom's Hardware that somebody has used Raspberry Pi to create the classic Winamp MP3 player in real life. They're calling it the Linamp. No llamas were harmed in the making of this project. I do love that subhead, but Rachel chiming in on the chat as well, talking about Winamp being the best. I mean, I was probably still using Winamp when I probably should no longer have been using Winamp. And I remember even when they started incorporating live streams in Winamp, that was kind of like the later stages when you kind of feel like maybe they were headed towards going away. But I do miss Winamp, and I think this would be a really cool thing to own, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny because lately, I no secret, I'm a big physical media guy. That's kind of my thing. So lately, I've been watching some videos on modern like boom boxes and things with cassette players. Even though I don't really collect cassettes, CD players and even some turntables. I find that the fact there are people still out there making new versions of this technology to be oddly fascinating. But then I saw this and I thought, that's the other half of my musical childhood now is Winamp. It's just it's no more antiquated really than the boombox as far as I'm concerned, but it elicits an emotion when I see that. Like this physical rendition of the Winamp, just the emotion that it elicits in me is like, oh yeah, that. It's fantastic, and the amount of work that had to go into this was really something. But if they were to ever make a commercial version of this, I would buy it day one. There's no doubt about it.
No question. And there were so many skins you could get for Winamp, but the one that's pictured in the article, which I've also linked in our chat, is that classic Winamp look. So just really cool. And it's funny, I didn't get a chance to talk to you about this, but the day that we had just watched a couple of YouTube videos talking about cassettes making a comeback and reviewing these cassette players, I'm watching a video. I watch a lot of travel YouTube people, and one of the people I watch is Chris Broad, is a Broad in Japan channel, which is really good. And he did this video, which is really fascinating, where he took the train line around Tokyo and got off at all 30 stops to talk about something that was interesting at all 30 stops. During this trip, he goes into a music store, and there is one of like the city pop artists who I can't remember off the top of my head, but they were selling the album and the CD, and indeed brand new versions of the cassette. So later in the trip, he had to go into another music store to buy a cassette player because he did not have one, and they had multiple models to choose from. So I don't understand it, but there are a lot of things that people collect and that I don't understand, but it does appear that in some form or fashion, cassettes are coming back.
It's amazing to me because audio cassettes to me are like the odd technological advancement that everyone knew when they came out with it didn't generate a better sound. It was, I mean, maybe I'm wrong because this would be a little before my time, but to me it was more about these are really small and convenient and they don't skip like a record. It was never about these produce the best possible audio experience for you. But evidently people want them back, so I don't even know.
To me, it was a couple of things. It was, as you mentioned, small and portable. It basically allowed you to bring your music into the car with you or wherever when you're walking.
Like your Sony Walkman.
Right. It's basically, and now you can take your music anywhere. And you can actually record your own things because you can actually record onto cassettes. I mean, my broadcast career started recording, slow pitch softball games on a cassette player in Fayetteville, Ohio. And maybe somewhere around here I would love to see if I still had a version of any of those games.
Some painful softball to have to describe for people.
It was just setting me up for like a lot of my sports fandom to come for sure. But, so it's weird, but cassettes seem to be making some sort of comeback. I'm holding out for 8-track players. Bands, if you're out there and you're going to release your new album on 8-track, I am ready. I don't even know where you would get an 8-track player. But as I talked about on one of our other podcasts, I did just buy 4 Slayer's laser discs, and I still have not procured a laser disc player. So that's next on the agenda before I maybe start thinking about upping my cassette collection. But I definitely love the Winamp thing, the Winamp knockoff thing that they've created through Raspberry Pi. So definitely check that out. Really pretty cool, especially, again, if you're of a certain age, there's definitely a nostalgia factor there. One last news story before we get to the new music this week. Came out from Metal Injection. I know it's been talked about for a while that Queen has been looking to sell their back catalog. This article citing a source from Bloomberg saying Queen's in talks with Sony to possibly sell their catalog for up to $1 billion, around 790 million British pounds. It would be the single largest sale of any band's catalog to ever happen. The previous record was Bruce Springsteen's catalog in late 2021, which went for $501 million or 393 million British pounds. There's a couple things. I love Queen. We've talked about that. We talked about it Night at the Opera. Maybe one of my all-time favorite rock bands. So I want to make sure that's really clear. I guess the question I have is, with all these streaming sources, with the stories come out every day about, artists get paid like hundreds and thousands of a cent for every time they're streamed. if you're Sony, like, at what point are you going to make your money back on this purchase of $1 billion to buy this catalog? I understand it's in perpetuity, so you've got the rest of time to make this money back. But at the same time, how many music catalogs are really going to be worth $1 billion when you consider how little these streaming companies value music at this point?
Yeah, it's definitely not one of those like penny stocks that's going to potentially 10x one day and you're ridiculously rich off of it. This is a slow play for sure. I guess I'm kind of curious, and my first thought about this was, what is the demand for Queen music in advertising? If you went to Apple and said, "Hey, for your next iPhone, how about we're the champions in your commercial? How much are you willing to pay for that?" I guess over the long haul, just by doing that, I mean, we'll end up hearing Queen songs on every commercial out there, and maybe they can make the money back that way. But I would think that would be still a really slow burn. And also, if Springsteen's catalog sold for $500 million, Queen's would have to be worth at least 10 times that at the very least.
And again, the question would be whether you could make $500 million off of any catalog, let alone Springsteen's. But you would almost think they would have to restrict its usage to just the biggest of the big companies, Apple, stuff like that, and Super Bowl commercials. Because
sure.
If you're spending $7 million or $10 million for a 30-second ad, like, you're sparing no expense to do that. It's almost like that game trailer we just watched the other day.
Oh, yeah, for that mobile game that had all sorts of top-name actors in it and was 5 minutes long. These mobile games make so much money. It's almost comical when kind of the overriding emotion towards the Summer Game Fest was like doom and gloom because all these studios are shutting down and no one's making money, and then you have the mobile side that is just raking it in still.
So that's the solution for Sony. Queen mobile game.
Absolutely.
It's gotcha. That's how you do it. You I don't know what you gotcha in that game, but you'll make your $1 billion back in like a year probably.
That is entirely possible.
So yeah, we'll just keep an eye on that story because obviously still more news to come on that, but we will see whether that ends up being the price they end up paying for it. But again, Queen obviously amazing, and would not surprise me to see them get that price. So we're going to move on to the main topic of today's podcast, which is our new music. We'll be talking about 4 different new releases. These are the releases from May the 24th. Mike puts together a list. Mike has just pasted that list in the chat. Basically, we'll go through and watch all the music, and then we'll each pick 2 brand new releases to spotlight each and every week. And then after our break on the podcast side, we will go into the vault where Mike and I will each give you a classic album that you need to check out. So we're going to start with Mike, as we always do. You've got 2 very awesome releases this week. Really good stuff on the music front. What do you have for us first this week?
Yeah, I was definitely pleased with numerous bands I heard this week. Had no problem picking 2. For my first one, I am going with the debut album from an Italian traditional heavy metal band. The band is called Hextar, and the album is called Doomsayer. Yeah,
these were one of the guys that I definitely listened to a little bit of their stuff and really enjoyed it. Like I said, there's some really good stuff this week, and definitely curious to hear a little bit more about Hextar. Or Hextar? Hextar.
Yes, it's a weird name.
It is.
But it rocks. Yeah, so when looking these guys up, when I first saw the album art on the YouTube video for the song, I'm like, yeah, I know this has promise already. Let's hear what they got. The tags on their Bandcamp for this album are as follows: 80s, heavy metal, metal, power metal, shredding, and Venice, which, being the city they're from. But the rest of them, I'm thinking, okay, this is obviously right up my alley. Continuing on their Bandcamp, their bio read, in the past bygone era of 2019, 4 individuals decided to join forces in the most nonsensical endeavor you can partake in the 21st century, playing heavy metal. So, clearly they went into this as true lovers of metal that probably knew that it was going to be an uphill battle to really, make it to the next level in that line of work. But man, did they ever exceed in this endeavor? Let me tell you. Let's see. I mean, going back to the artwork, first off, their logo looks. If you were to have AI come up with an 80s really awesome metal logo for you, you would hope it does this well. The album art itself has this really cool stained glass window surrounded by skulls. It's everything you could possibly want in a really cool metal record. Starts out with a spoken word track kind of setting the stage for the album, then kicks in with the song Nothing Is Eternal, which feels very new wave of British heavy metal. Almost kind of punkish to a degree with the tempo of it, but still really awesome. The song Hour of Glory might be my new favorite at the moment. It's just got really cool riffs to it, and the chorus has this anthemic quality. I was listening to it on my walk this morning and thought, man, now I'm into this. I have to keep going. One thing about this album that I think is a little different than some of the others I've listened to lately is I feel like it actually gets stronger the further you go into it. You have all these really fast and aggressive songs, and then kind of out of nowhere, this acoustic instrumental track, A Requiem for Fools, plays, which, if it wasn't for that spoken word track at the beginning, I kind of feel like this could have been the intro, because it kind of has that, think of early Metallica albums where they would have the softer intro leading into the heavy. It kind of had that feel to it. But it then leads into the title track, Doomsayer, which is outstanding, like I mentioned before. I think that's actually the song that we have to play here, Doomsayer, the title track. I think it kind of encapsulates what their sound is.
Right now, Italian metal is clearly huge. I feel like we can't go more than a couple of weeks without spotlighting some band from Italy. So we're going to check out, as you mentioned, Doomsayer, the title track from the album Doomsayer from the band Hextar. So let's check that out now here on Music Weekly.
It's a matter of fate, they say. A matter of sins. Or can science explain this? Scripto, madness, listen to my warnings. Scripto, save your lives. Scripto, madness, live on gold and silver. Scripto, save your lives. Don't say it.
Yeah, what can you say? I mean, if you love heavy metal, that's as classic a heavy metal sound as you can get, and it's just gotta love it. It's just so aggressive and makes you want to just take off running through a wall somewhere. They've got a great sound.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's something that would fit in really well with that 80s new wave of British heavy metal scene and even the Bay Area thrash scene, but it doesn't feel old or tired. It still feels really, really energetic and full of life, and I can't wait to hear more from these guys.
Yeah, I would definitely want to check out the rest of their album, but you can check it out. I've linked the link to the YouTube music version of that album in the chat, but check out Hextar with Doomsayer. Really great stuff coming out of Italy once again. That was your first pick of this week. Let's talk about your second pick for this week.
Yeah, so for my second pick, if my first band would have fit in with the Bay Area thrash scene, I think the second band would have been right at home on the Sunset Strip of the kind of 80s glam pop metal days. This is the fourth full-length album from the German glam and sleaze metal band. The band is Night Laser, which is a tremendous name also. And the album is Call Me What You Want.
I love the term sleaze metal. And it's funny because then we've gone through this so much that you start comparing these bands that call themselves sleaze, and it's well, the different degrees of sleaze. Yeah, that's a pretty good description. This was another group that I had on my short list for this week, and just really great stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. The term sleaze just seems so less about the sound and more about the aesthetic, I guess. There are songs on there that when you hear them, you think, okay, yeah, that's what you mean by sleaze. Like, and when you watch the videos to their songs, Bittersweet Dreams and Way to the Thrill, yeah, you can definitely tell they're going for that sleaze vibe. Like, it kind of fits right in with some of those hair metal bands back in the day that definitely had a look to them. They weren't as polished or as like glammy as Poison. They were more dirty. They kind of had that look going on. But both those songs are outstanding. Rockreport.be kind of references this band having some musical evolution on this album compared to some of their earlier work. So I think there are times where when you hear them, you don't necessarily think sleaze. There are times where their sound kind of comes off more power metal-y or just melodic rocky, which I think certainly works. Let's see, what did I have here? Like something like Law of the Vulture, I think, almost had power metal vibes to it. You had like a song like Laser Train, which definitely felt sleazy, but then it's followed by a mostly acoustic pop metal ballad, Travelers in Time. So there's definitely some diversity along the album, and it finishes with a 9-minute epic power metalish track, The Fiddler on the Roof. So it's kind of all over the place. I think if you're into any kind of the popular hard rock music from the 80s, you're definitely going to enjoy this. There's a whole lot to like here. The song that I picked for playing kind of has more of like an, anthemic pop metal vibe to it. I think someone in one of the reviews I read suggested it could be like a Eurovision entry for the band, but the song in question is "Don't Call Me a Hero," and I think you'll see what I'm talking about when you hear it.
Yeah, I think calling it a Eurovision entry is a really accurate description of this track. These guys are great. Let's check out "Don't Call Me a Hero" from "Call Me What You Want," the latest release from Night Laser. If I can get it to play. Yeah, it's just it's got such a almost a sing-along nature to that chorus. I like you said, I think it's definitely something that would play well with the masses and would be a great concert track to get to hear live.
Yeah, super catchy, and as far as catchy sing-along-y metal, the Germans do it very well typically.
Yeah, absolutely, and no surprise that this is. It's got a great sound. Definitely check out Night Laser with "Call Me What You Want." Really good release this week from them. I picked 2 tracks as well, and we're going to start off with, let me see which order I put these in. The first group I picked, and we're going to stay with a German band. This is a band called Reverend Hound with Deal in Steel. They are a thrash metal band from Munich, Germany, formed in 2008. This is only their second full-length album. The first one since 2015. They did release an EP in 2018. The cover of this album, again, immediately draws you into it. It has some sort of like Thor-like wolf hybrid pounding an anvil as you would have a steel worker do. He's dealing in steel, I guess you could say. It's just got a great melodic thrash sound. It's thrash music sometimes maybe doesn't hit the melodies because it is so interested in being fast. These guys really do work that in really well together. Standout tracks. I enjoyed The Night. Love the speed metal guitar at the beginning of Rain, which was a really nice touch there. And the one we're going to listen to, Days of Wrath, really to me felt a little bit like Iron Maiden. Kind of got their vibes from that song, but definitely enjoyed Reverend Hound. We're going to check out one of the tracks off of this one. This is Days of Wrath. So we will get that set to go, and we will listen in to Days of Wrath from Reverend Hound off the album Deal in Steel.
I can see the pride, countless acts to spend my wings. Just a state of mind, dignity entwined, thousands screaming in despair. No other silent death is coming. The days of wrath will come. No other devil's calling. The days of wrath will come. Let it out! I interrupt this change.
But yeah, just a great classic thrash metal sound. But again, they've got some diversity in sound on this album. I think from front to back, you're going to hear a lot of different stuff. But really great stuff from these guys. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we have another kind of traditional metal band, and I love that. That has been one of my favorite takeaways from doing the podcast, is that I feel like we've discovered so many bands playing the kind of music that I assume bands quit playing a long time ago. Bands, they sound amazing, and definitely someone I'm looking to get into more as we go. But yeah, what can I say? I mean, Germans know their metal.
Yeah, between Germany and Italy, I feel like we have found so many bands in the process of doing this show each and every week. This one being the 17th edition of Music Weekly. I just feel like those two countries are really doing it right. Now, we've had a lot of other countries doing it right as well, but we've had a ton of great acts out of Italy and Germany. So definitely check those guys out. Reverend Hound with Deal in Steel. Great stuff from them. Final pick of the week as far as new music is a group called Teramaze with their new release, Eli, A Wonderful Fall from Grace. This is a progressive rock and metal group from Geelong, Victoria, Australia. They formed in 1993, so it's another one of these groups that has been around for a long time. This is their 11th full-length album, but they've really been kind of picking up the pace. This is their 5th album since 2020, so really starting to churn out the albums. They started out as Terror Maze, but converted to Christianity, and then changed the name of their band to Teramaze. As you would expect out of a prog album, this one goes all over the place, but everything they do is just really well done. This is a concept album, or at least part of a concept trilogy, according to the Prog Report. It's a concept album that finishes the trilogy of Teramaze's Halo story, following 2015's Her Halo and 2021's Sorella Minor, or Minore, I'm not sure which. The concept is intriguing. Eli, a shipwrecked survivor, becomes a star attraction in the circus, but at a terrible price. The trilogy's conclusion takes us to the very beginning of the story, which explores themes of betrayal, love, and wonder. Just great stuff. Again, great diversity in sound on this one. The standout tracks to me, Step Right Up, Standing Ovation, and we're going to hear a little bit from Madame Roma. There's a couple of very lengthy songs on this album. Madame Roma checks it at 9:38, and then the title track, A Wonderful Fall from Grace, wraps up the album at 14:32. Again, no question that these guys are prog. When you look at some of them, we also have a couple of 8-minute songs and a 7-minute song in there. But again, everything they do, even when they go in different directions, is done at such a high level. So we're going to check out a little bit of Madame Roma, which I think is just a good example of some of the stuff they do and how they do it really well in this album. So let's check that out now.
The price to pay for
sometimes the prog song, it's hard to find a place to trim it off and fade it out. But this was one of those ones where I enjoyed the track that Mike put on the playlist. And when I got into the album, I even enjoyed what they did even more. It's definitely worth listening to this album front to back. You're going to take the whole ride with these guys, but just really outstanding stuff. Mike, your thoughts?
I think that's probably some kind of hallmark of prog music that I haven't considered until now because I've never put together long playlists of prog music, but it's that here's the chorus. I could take that snippet and use it, but then there's this one part that isn't the chorus, but I think it sounds really cool. Maybe I should use that. And then there's this whole part over here that's just completely different than everything else, and I think people should know about it. It creates all sorts of problems, but yeah, I really enjoyed this. I'm a big Dream Theater fan, and I think you can definitely hear some Dream Theater in them as far as both the music and even the singer kind of has some James LaBrie type vocals to him. Certainly not a bad thing if you're going to go the prog metal route. There are worse bands to kind of follow as an example, but yeah, another band that I want to hear more of. I think they're really good.
And they've been doing it for a long time. Definitely interested in checking out their back catalog. And great to hear this one this week. One of my favorite releases of the week. Teramaze with Eli, A Wonderful Fall from Grace. Definitely check that out. You're listening to our live version of Music Weekly here on Twitch. Of course, you might be listening on the VOD. You might be listening on the podcast version. If you are listening on the podcast version, we're about to step aside. When we come back, we're going to head into the vault. Mike and I will give you a classic album you need to check out. We'll do that on the other side of this time out here on the Nerdcast Empire. Back on the Nerdcast Empire live on Twitch or on demand, maybe on Twitch, maybe on YouTube, maybe on your favorite podcast source. Matt and Mike with you once again this week, talking Music Weekly. Don't forget to check out our website, nerdcastempire.com. You can download all of our previous podcasts from there. You can get those, obviously, from your favorite podcast sources. Well, we do have a store. Please check that out and get your Nerdcast Empire merch. And the biggest thing right now, we're continuing to try to build followers on our Twitch page. So if you happen to stop by the Twitch VOD and you like what you hear, please just drop us a follow. Once we get to 50 follows, we'll be able to try to monetize this a little bit, which will be great for us and will allow us to do more cool things. So please tell a buddy, tell a friend, buy, sell, trade, don't you dare miss it, all that good stuff, like Bill Goodman's Gun and Knife show back in the day.
That is a classic jingle, probably one of the best of all time.
Maybe it is. But please check us out wherever you get your podcast, or again, YouTube or Twitch, each and every week. We're going to be back in just a few hours to do this again live on Twitch if you are watching us live, or maybe soon after this originally aired. We're going to be back at 11 p.m. Eastern Time to talk NXT Battleground. Really excited for this event. I think it's got a chance to be just a really great show for NXT, and one that I feel like is very wide open as far as what could happen. I think filling out the scorecard today was maybe one of the harder ones we filled out in a while, because I think you can legitimately make cases for winners to be different in almost every match across the card.
I think that, and I also think that they've gotten some buzz due to some of the kind of outside-of-the-box booking they've had and this TNA involvement. It would be so tough to not want to just pull the lever entirely and just have every match tonight have as much nonsense and ridiculous finishes as possible, just to continue to build on the buzz you're getting. So it could either be totally by the book or totally off the rails. We'll see.
Chris is going to try to continue to finish his story. We will see whether that actually happens tonight or not. But you'll have to tune in to find out, of course. And maybe sometime in the future, we'll put our code for our group in these chats and stuff, or maybe on our Discord. Our Discord's kind of getting an overhaul right now. We're hoping to eventually get that into a public source so people can join us on Discord and we can let people know where we're going to be. I know Mike's starting to stream a little bit more. I'm going to be streaming a little more very soon. I know Chris is already streaming very regularly when he gets a chance. So we'll try to have a place where everybody can kind of see where our schedules are when we do that. So a lot of cool stuff coming, a lot of great content coming up from the Nerdcast Empire. So make sure you follow us anywhere and everywhere. And we're going
I was definitely streaming some 10-yard fight on NES yesterday.
Nice.
The pinnacle of video game football, I might add.
It sounds awful. Just a name. Like you makes it sound like some sort of American Gladiators football. Like
kind of,
break
yeah.
through and conquer.
It's funny. You start out, you select your difficulty, which I select high school because I wanted to make it as easy as possible.
Sure.
The only times I attempted passes, I just threw it straight to one of the defensive linemen. I don't know how I did that. I don't like when you're on defense, you get a choice of hitting the A or B button, and that determines which like kind of linebacker you become and control. But since the difficulty was so low, I could just dive at whoever it was. I mean, my defense was pretty fantastic. I was up 14-3 at the half and just called it. But yeah, I don't know how to call plays. I don't know if you can. It was really something.
I mean, the fact you can't pass makes it sound like high school difficulty, because I know our high school for many years could not pass. So that actually sounds very authentic to game.
But my rushing game was unbeatable.
Well, there you go. You can still run the football in high school. But good stuff there. And like I said, we'll be doing more streaming stuff. So make sure you follow along. Really cool stuff coming down the pike here in the next days and weeks to come. It's time to go into the vault, where we will spotlight some classic albums for you to check out. Mike, you're continuing through the alphabet each and every week, and got another great choice for us this week. What do you got?
Yeah, so this one was a little difficult. We've moved on to the letter P, which did have some options. There was one particular band I definitely wanted to go with, but it's a little strange because there are certain bands that I tend to listen to only certain times of the year, I guess, or prefer to listen to during certain times of the year. Typically the more gothic and less uplifting and positive bands I tend to reserve for late fall and winter when I'm kind of feeling that way. But kind of some backstory into this. Years ago, I got into a band called Sentenced, who at the time had kind of transitioned from a death metal band to a gothic metal band with the new singer they had at the time, Ville Laihiala. Not long after getting into them, they announced they were disbanding and released a final album, the Funeral album, and then also a live album, Buried Alive, which are both great for the record. But that was in 2005. A couple years before that, this lead singer actually started a second band, Poisonblack, with the lead singer from Charon, Juha-Pekka Lebeluoto, which I'm probably saying that totally wrong, but these are Finnish names, so I can only do so much.
Sure.
That singer left, and Laihiala took over on vocal duties, which basically turned this into kind of the second version of Sentence, so that was really awesome. That being said, I could have picked any of their albums, and I enjoy all of them, but for my vault pick, I'm going with their 2010 album. That album being Of Rust and Bones. The band is Poisonblack, and that is my vault pick for this week.
Yeah, this is not a band I've probably listened to a whole lot, so that's always interesting when it's something out of your collection that I don't know as well, but gothic metal, certainly see a ton of that each and every week on our list, so always kind of interesting to see classic gothic metal. I'm sure these guys have influenced a lot of these current gothic metal groups, especially the ones coming out of Europe. Finnish metal, I'm always down for. A lot of great bands out of Finland for sure, and then probably something I need to go back and listen to because it sounds like I like gothic metal and I like rock bands from Finland, so these guys would kind of hit those notes.
Yeah, and I'm kind of encouraged to see on their Wikipedia that they actually got back together in 2023 for some dates to celebrate their 20th anniversary. So I'm hoping more comes out of that because the singer in question and the band leader of Poisonblack, he kind of had another project he did after Poisonblack, but I don't think a whole lot came of it. I follow them on YouTube, but they never post anything. But I've always enjoyed this guy's vocals, so that's always been really cool. And if you go back and listen to Sentenced before he took over vocals, when it was just a death metal band, I enjoy it, but man, it is something entirely different. But as far as this album goes, it's not the longest album by any means, but I think it kind of hits all of their kind of audio hallmarks that I look for in their music. Some of the standout tracks are Sunshine's Black, Buried Alive, Casket Case. Alone and the last song are probably two of my favorite songs from this band. Definitely worth listening to, and probably aren't going to put you in a better mood, but they're definitely enjoyable.
Should be noted, the guy who was involved with recording, engineering, mixing, also did some backing vocals. Vocals was a guy by the name of Kai Hilisma. Notable for a couple reasons. Number one, he's also produced stuff for Amorphous, Him, In fact, most of the him albums
that's
that
not
appears,
surprising, I guess.
dating back to 1996, it actually looks like 8 albums. Lordy from 2004, Sentenced as well, 3 albums there. But he's kind of known for his recording in analog. He doesn't like digital recording. He's quoted on Wikipedia saying, I prefer analog these days. Not only the sound, it asks more attitude to work with analog. Also, you must make up your mind faster. There's no undo in analog, which is often good. So
That's really interesting.
yeah, an album that will almost certainly come up when I get to that year will be an album from the Foo Fighters that they recorded completely analog, which is one of my all-time favorite Foo Fighters albums. And there is something to be said for that, not having that ability to fix it as easily. So you live with some imperfections, which makes the album more authentic to what you're going to hear live. And, sometimes you get through it faster because you
have to settle.
You have to settle on, like, this is it. Like, you're not having to, digitally mess with it so much. So.
I think rock is kind of meant to be imperfect.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Otherwise, we would all be classical composers or something to that nature. I think,
But yeah, great stuff from Poisonblack. Check that out, of Rust and Bones, Mike's Vault pick this week. As I mention every week, I am continuing through the years, and we are up to 1981. We're getting to the point where it's getting harder and harder each week to try to single out one album because there are just so many. And also, I have picked so many of these bands already that I'm trying not to pick them again so quickly right after I picked them because there's so much. Chris is already bitter, I think, about my non-choice of Rush and Moving Pictures from 1981. And rest assured, when I come around the second time, I will be picking that.
Rush, is that band that was from Aqua Teen Hunger Force?
I believe so.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite Rush albums, but I just picked Rush. So, and obviously you have 404 in 1981, which is a great album. Journey's Escape is there. Maybe notable just because it's a band that you and I both like. I know you very much got me into them. Was Bad Religion's first EP was released in 1981, self-titled. Only 6 tracks and like 9 minutes long, but that
sounds about right.
That is definitely Bad Religion. But because of that, I wanted to try to find a different band to choose for 1981, and basically picking the gold standard album from the group Triumph, which was released in September of 1981. The album is Allied Forces. This is kind of the definitive Triumph album. If you want to just buy one Triumph album, which you should buy more because these guys are great, they're still around, but this is a good one to start with. You start off with a Fool for Your Love, and then come right in with Magic Power, Air Raid, Allied Forces, Hot Time in the City Tonight. Then you've got Fight the Good Fight. Really all their big hits, or a lot of their big hits, coming from this one album. Did very well on the charts, hit number 8 and number 18 on the U.S. mainstream rock chart at the time, then year end as well. These guys are just really, really talented. I feel like that they don't necessarily get enough credit, probably because there are other bands at this time that are bigger, and maybe other bands even in Canada. Obviously,
no bigger band from Canada.
No, I think they are the biggest band from Canada. But
until Nickelback,
right? But this is just really great stuff. Rick Emmett on vocals, just so good. Also played guitar, Bottleneck Slide, lap steel guitar on this album as well. This is just great hard rock from Ontario, Canada. And again, a lot of other bands with a lot of big albums this year, but if you're going to pick one album from Triumph, this is the one that makes the most sense. So I'm going with Allied Forces from Triumph from 1981.
Yeah, I mean, great pick. I think anytime you can pick the quintessential album from a band while you're going through years, you definitely take the chance. There won't be any other opportunities really for Triumph as far as, each year it's just going to get more and more ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, just tremendous album. Magic Power, like you said, Allied Forces, Fight the Good Fight. Just, yeah, I can't argue with that one.
Magic Power is one of my all-time favorite songs by any band at any time. So when you get the chance to pick that one, it's hard to pass it up. But Great stuff. Check out Triumph. All their stuff is great, but Allied Force is a great one to start with. It's just really
Gilmore, heck of a singer.
Oh my goodness, definitely. They're just great. They're really talented musicians.
And Rick Emmett, I suppose.
Yes,
They're all singing.
it's great stuff from Triumph, and that was released in 1981. That is going to wrap things up for our first podcast today on the Nerdcast Empire on our 2-podcast Sunday, as it turns out, and we're going to be returning in just a few hours' time with a recap of NXT Battleground. Really excited for that. That'll be coming up at approximately 11 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll be right after the Premium Live event ends. Should be good stuff. Definitely looking forward to that. Mike will be back with me tonight, and Rachel will be joining us as well for her first live podcast. So we'll see if Rachel can keep us from getting banned from Twitch during tonight's podcast. A lot of pressure on Rachel. We'll see if she can come through for us, but looking forward to that. We'll be back on Thursday as well. We're going to be talking anime music on Thursday with another edition of some of our favorite anime songs. We also may have another podcast in there somewhere. We're building up another set of news headlines, so you never know. We might drop in for a bonus one. But then 1 week from tonight, should be back in our regular start time, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, with another edition of Music Weekly. Also, I think we'll be back on Saturday as well for a recap of WWE Clash at the Castle, which will be coming up on Saturday. So we got a lot of podcasts coming up, a lot of great stuff. Hope you join us on the Nerdcast Empire. Big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support of our podcast. We will be back in just a few hours' time with our review of NXT Battleground. Until then, for Mike and the entire crew, I'm Matt saying so long. Don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.